everyone to episode 3 of Zoom Action. We've got a special episode today because Kentucky just beat the Duke Blue Devils 77-72 down in Atlanta. Great game from start to finish, thrilling throughout. I don't think we ever got to like maybe more than a 10-point lead on either side. Duke maybe had like an 11-point lead at one point, but it was very close throughout. Kentucky trailed for 27 minutes, I think was the official, a little over 27 minutes in that game. Came up with some really, really big plays in like the final 6 minutes of that game to push past Duke, kind of let the experience take over Duke's clear youth, which became an issue down the stretch there. Cooper Flagg had some bad turnovers. They just looked exhausted. They had cramps, injuries. The youth really showed out. Kentucky's perseverance and experience really shined through as well. Excellent excellent coaching from Pope. Poping should be like our new, that should be a new verb though. I feel like when you're winning basketball games, beating Duke, you're poping. Yeah. So we'll go with that. But we're back here in the Phil room. We've already done our rewatch. I actually did mine this morning. We're recording on Thursday afternoon. Mark Pope already spoke to the media. He gave us a little bit more background of what went down in that Duke game. So if anything he said is relevant to our conversation here, I'll poke in with it, and we'll go from there. But we're going to go ahead and jump right in. We've technically got 4 plays queued up for you all today. I don't think I've even introduced myself. Zack Geoghegan, Brandon Ramsey, you know us by now at this point. Stephen Peak in the back doing the producing. But we're actually going to start with a defensive play. And it kind of goes into Coach Pope's second half adjustments, where Duke had 46 points in the first half and then had 26 points in the second half. Pope was actually almost a little, you could tell that he was a little annoyed with how they let up 46 points in the first half. He said that is not our brand of basketball. They did a bunch of different minor tweaks and adjustments, and it really paid off in the second half. So Brandon, let's go ahead and let me go ahead and get myself in order here. I'll throw this play into the stage. So we are taking us to the 7-10 mark of the second half. Kentucky is down 4. This is a really good defensive play overall from Brandon Garrison, who actually ends up scoring on the other end. I will let this kind of play out for a second here. Brandon, if you don't mind to go ahead and start it.
Average just under 8 points and over 5 rebounds a game.
Brandon,
really
if you can
good
mute that audio real quick, actually. There we go. You get a switch from Andrew Carr. Well, let's back up first. Andrew Carr was guarded by Cooper Flagg for a bulk of this game. Who called that first? The man that is way over there. Brandon Ramsey called that first, said that Andrew Carr would draw the assignment first. Pretty much had it for a lot of the game. It felt like there was a lot of switching going on. It wasn't really a one-on-one situation the whole game. But you see Andrew Carr starts out here on Cooper Flagg, who at this point was kind of in his bag. He was cooking a little bit. He gets a nice switch here onto Brandon Garrison, which, in most situations, it's going to be an advantage for Cooper Flagg. But Brandon Garrison just does an excellent job not letting Cooper go back past him. Cooper kind of makes a bad decision taking a forced shot, but a great defense overall there from Brandon, which kickstarts a great Kobe Bryant rebound, who runs the fast break himself, finds Brandon for the easy layup on the other end. And Kentucky kind of, I think from that point on, really starts to assert themselves and take over this game. So I'll let Brandon dive into the film room here and talk about why this was maybe an adjustment or from something that we didn't see in the first half, and why this was such a big play for Kentucky. So Brandon, go ahead and take us into the mind of Coach Ramsey.
Yeah, so I think one of the big adjustments going from the first half to the second half was just Kentucky's willingness to switch, not just 1 through 4, but especially with Brandon Garrison, some at 1 through 5. We see how mobile and fluid he is. His footwork is outstanding on the perimeter. And I think that when he's in the game, late in the first half, he got stuck sort of in between a couple times when he was playing drop coverage. One time, I think Conk-Nipple was able to keep it and go score. The other time, Luke was able to catch it on the lob and dunk it. And I think that you just need to unlock his athleticism by allowing him to switch onto guards, or in this case, a 4-man who essentially is a guard. And especially when Malik Brown is in there at the 5, he's just not nearly as dangerous on the roll, so you're not going to get whipped on the glass or different things when you're switching Andrew Carr onto him. And just how active and fluid Brandon Garrison is out here on the perimeter to force this jump shot, to contest it. He very clearly doesn't foul. This is a flop by Cooper Flagg. And then also, look at the job here by Kobe Bryant to physically go get this rebound. This is Mason Gillis, who's like 6'6", 220 pounds, and Kobe Bryant is walling him off here to get a defensive rebound And then, as Zach mentioned, you start the break, you go down, Brandon Garrison on the rim run. Like one of the things with Brandon Garrison, he always plays so hard. It might not all be perfect. There's still some kind of rawness to his game as he continues to develop, but he's going to play incredibly hard, and he's a special athlete at the 5. And I think kind of unlocking some of his abilities defensively in the second half by allowing him to switch and move his feet on the perimeter really brought out the best in his game.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you there. I just love where Brandon is right here on this play. Cooper, or where he was before you moved it back there, like when Cooper flag falls down, he knows that immediately. And the second he sees Cooper flag on the ground, guess what he's doing? He trips over him there a little bit, but he's sprinting. He's already way behind the Duke defense. Malik Brown, or whoever their big man, is so far behind this play because of the switch that occurred on the other end. And Brandon was so far ahead. Great recognition from Kobe. And yeah, you can see there that there's no Duke player in the realm there because of Brandon's willingness to really run the floor there and get himself in a prime position. So just wanted to point that out, Brandon. Sorry for interrupting you there.
No, absolutely. It's a great point. That's exactly what I was talking about too. Just with that, those first couple of steps. And yeah, I mean, he even got tripped up a little bit there, and he's just able to beat everybody down the court. And points like that, it wasn't always easy for Kentucky to score against Duke, but to be able to find 2 easy points here, 2 easy points there, just like you got right here. That's how you end up getting to 77 and finding a way to win the game.
Yeah, just to touch on Brandon not Brandon Ramsey, but Brandon Garrison just for a second. He does this thing where it seems like for 4 or 5 minute spurts, you see the NBA draft player kind of emerging. And we saw a lot of that in sort of near the end of this game. I think he blocked Con Knippel's 3 in the corner at 1.2, had another really tough, kind of where he had to take it from his right and adjust to his left and lay it off the backboard, which is just tough for guys that are that big. So I've just been very, very. He even it wasn't a 3, but Brandon, guess what? I'm calling it
so
a 3.
Close.
If the guy was just like a 10-foot shoe or a size 10 shoe instead of the 14 that he probably is, he's making a 3 there. So I just loved what we saw from Brandon Garrison overall. Amari is still the guy that you got to go with, but it's just so nice to see not much of a drop off when you go from your 7-foot center to your next 7-foot center. So I just wanted to make that point there. But unless you got anything else, Brandon, we'll dive on and let's talk about some offense.
Yeah, let's keep it moving.
All right, in play number 2 here, we're going to the offensive side. It takes us to a tie ball game with about 3 minutes left, 67-67. We're actually starting on the defensive end, but the bulk of this play is on offense. I just want to point out some of Jackson Robinson's willingness to do things that aren't score the ball and how it impacts winning. Just some great defense here from Con Knippel. Doesn't let him beat him around the side there to get baseline. Forces Con into like a physical bump there, which makes him slip and fall. Dives on the ground. You've got a loose ball. It's everywhere in the air. Ortega gets it, sparks his own transition here, and this is where the play really opens up for Andrew Carr, who is kind of the fulcrum of this play, if you want to say. So we'll let it run here just for a second. Jackson Robinson kicks it over to Andrew Carr. We've got a series of, I don't even know what that miscommunication on the side there is, Brandon, or not miscommunication, but miscommunication on Duke, but I don't know what the play call is there or if it's just a recognition thing, but Andrew Carr does a great job of kind of fooling the defense and thinking that Lamont Butler is going to come up and receive this pass. Kind of bad defense from Duke because Lamont Butler, I think, was like 1 for 4, maybe 1 for 3 from 3 at that point. But great recognition from Andrew Carr, and it's just kind of something that built into this offense of being able to know that you've got guys cutting and moving all the time. It confuses Duke just enough in kind of a half fast break situation here. Ortega Owe gets, I think this is Kentucky's first lead since like the 8 or 10 minute mark of the first half, something like that. Like this was where they really, I actually think Cooper Flag comes out with like a crazy and one after this, but we won't talk about that. Brandon, we saw what Jackson did on that end. We don't need to go back and talk about that. Just great individual defense from him there to stop a really talented freshman. Take me through this play here, what you saw, what opened up for Ortega there, and even Andrew, what he saw, and talk about why we chose this play.
Yeah, so really here in the final 3 minutes or so of the game, the keys kind of got turned over to Andrew Carr. Now, it certainly wasn't because Amari Williams or Brandon Garrison weren't playing well. Those guys had, Amari had 10 points, 8 rebounds, was a big part of the offense for a while for Kentucky. We've already talked about some of the things that Brandon Garrison brought to the floor, but Andrew Carr won Kentucky the game by being the man down the stretch. And, we one of the talking points of this Kentucky team has been, who's the go-to scorer? Who's the guy that can step up in a big spot and get a bucket? And we saw in a variety of different ways down the stretch, Andrew Carr kind of took the bull by the horns and said, hey, I'm the best player on this team. I'm going to go win us this game against Duke. And you see it here with actually, it doesn't end up looking like it, but this is our namesake, Zach. This is Zoom action. Like we're trying to run some Zoom here when Andrew Carr gets this catch on the top of at the top of the key. But it's just like we've talked about in the first couple episodes. The great thing about Zoom action, the great thing about a lot of Kentucky's offense is how multiple it is. And that, yes, this doesn't really look anything like drawn up Zoom action, but that's what it's supposed to be. And then you read and react off of it. And the read and react here is that as soon as Andrew Carr starts to dribble over, traditional Zoom action again would be Otega Oweh setting a down screen, Lamont Butler running off into a handoff. Well, what happens is you see Concanipple here. He turns his back and jumps out to switch the down screen with Lamont Butler. Well, the down screen really never even gets set, so there's nothing to switch. And Otega reads that really well and just slips right to the basket for a layup. So he kind of blows the play up before it's there because he's reading what Duke gives him. Duke was switching a lot of stuff throughout the game. Slips were there. It was something I talked about a lot in my Watch the Tape breakdown. When Kentucky slipped ball screens, off-ball screens, anything, they've had a lot of success. And Otega Oweh did a great job of recognizing it here. And then obviously with the ball in his hands, Andrew Carr is comfortable enough handling it. He can see over the top of the defense at 6'11" to deliver the pass to Otega Oweh. And Kentucky now has a lead, 69-67, with under 2 minutes and 40 seconds to play.
Yeah, we'll talk about it more in our next play as well. But Andrew, like you said, Andrew Carr kind of became the go-to guy down the stretch of this game, so to speak. I had some not so nice words about Andrew Carr that I shared in the first half with you and Steven. He made me eat them, and they were tasty. Honestly, in the second half, I was fine too. It feels like this is going to be a team where you might not have a go-to guy, but you will have a go-to guy for this game, and you will have a go-to guy for this game. It's going to be a game-by-game situation of who actually has the advantage down the stretch from Kentucky's perspective in terms of who they're playing. On this night, it just happened to be Andrew Carr. He had the experience. He had the height. That really played, especially against a really tall Duke team. So he just had tiny bits of advantages. He's got a really good post game. He had a freshman on him at one point. The next play we'll actually talk about. So like I said, just great recognition from Andrew Carr here, who realized that he was the guy that really needed to step up and make some big plays. And this was kind of just the start of it here. And it's funny that he passed the ball to Otega, who, other than Andrew Carr, was probably the most important player in these final 3 minutes. Hit a bunch of clutch free throws, clutch rebounds. He hit some big shots in this game just in general. So that play was kind of...
Had the game-winning defensive play as well.
Game-winning defense. Yes, him and Amari both did a great job defending Cooper Flagg there, who kind of got himself a little too sped up, it felt like, at the end there. But we won't talk about Cooper Flagg. We're not Jay Williams. So let's go on to the next play here with about 2 minutes left. We might be able to do it without pausing here as well. So we're going to get another Andrew Carr situation here where he kind of takes it upon himself. Oh, that's Rob Lowe. Rob Lowe and Rob Lincoln
there's a lot of similarities there.
They're the exact same person. You can't convince me otherwise. So we won't talk about that really tough play from Cooper there, which was actually just better offense beating better defense against Kobe Brea. Yeah. But here we have the play. So it sets up as just kind of like it's a play that we've talked about. I think we talked about in the last episode, Brandon, where it's kind of a double stagger screen set on the left side of the court here that ends up kind of turning it. It doesn't really go, I guess, the way that Kentucky wanted or the way that Andrew Carr wanted. Maybe the end result overall was just try and maybe get Andrew Carr in a good position to score here. But we see the double stagger screen set. The top guy, Lamont Butler, kind of leaves the scene, slips away before Jackson can even come up there. I don't know if that's, Brandon, you can take us into the mind of how this play is designed and if that's what was actually supposed to happen. But Andrew doesn't really get himself too sped up or too, anxious, Notices that none of it happens, realizes that he has a freshman on him who at the point was already kind of dealing with cramps, and I think he had a knee injury as well, and just bullies his way into the paint here. hits a freshman with a good pump fake, goes right up over him and one. This was, without a doubt, the biggest shot of the entire game, I think, other than the free throws from Ortega there at the end, the biggest actual made field goal. So, Brandon, take us through what you saw here, why we chose this play, and explain to us what happens with that double stagger screen and why it kind of goes a little bit wonky and Andrew has to go into ISO mode.
Yeah, so you're getting into essentially almost like a staggered zoom action, really. Like it again on paper, this is a staggered double for Jackson Robinson, essentially to come off into a handoff with Andrew Carr. Now there's a lot of points to get to in between there, and it ends up not happening, mostly because once again Duke and Kentucky knew this going in, probably to the game, but certainly to this point of the game, they knew they were just going to switch all this action, and it was going to kind of blow it up. And you can see here, you have Tyrese Proctor defending Jackson Robinson. You have Con Knipple guarding Kobe Brea. They switch that first handoff. So nothing's really going to happen there. They just keep a guy on a guy. He's now out in front. Lamont Butler just slips the screen. He probably just decided he was going to slip it no matter what, knowing, again, that they're going to switch. They're going to jump out a little bit. Just thought he might be able to get a cheap one there. But once they switch that, it kind of blows up the entire play. And we just kind of end up getting these guys to clear out as Andrew Carr flips his hips. And this is something that he's really good at, is kind of turning a drive into a post move almost. But also, for everything Andrew Carr does on this play, look at Duke's defense as he drives it in here. Like right now, you have obviously Kobe Brea still kind of getting himself out of the way, but wherever he goes, Tyrese Proctor is going to go with him. You have Jackson Robinson spaced out over here. Con Knipple's not really wanting to commit to come help on Andrew Carr, because even though he's 0 for 4 at this point, this is what Coach Pope was talking about in the postgame. It wasn't just coach speak. It wasn't just trying to make somebody feel good after a bad game. Jackson Robinson had an impact on winning in his 26-plus minutes, despite scoring 1 point. He has a gravity to him on the perimeter where defenders aren't going to help off of him. Zack had just talked about in the last play how good he was defensively, and that was true throughout the game, especially in the second half. So he made a real impact on this game despite not scoring. And then here's a couple of guys that aren't necessarily thought of as elite shooters. Lamont Butler, he was 1 for 3 from 3 on the night. Ortega Owe, who's had a great season so far shooting the 3, but isn't exactly thought of as a knockdown shooter. Their defenders aren't wanting to leave them either. So now all of a sudden you have Andrew Carr on an island with a freshman, as you mentioned, Zach, and that's just not going to go well for the defense. It doesn't matter if it's this guy from Duke who was awesome throughout the game. It doesn't matter if it's Hunter Dickinson. It doesn't matter if it's Johnny Broome from Auburn or, Clifford Amore at Alabama now. Like, when it's one-on-one and he's able to drive the ball like this, Andrew Carr is going to have a lot of success this season.
And for our final play here, before we dive into just some general post-game thoughts from Brandon and myself, we're going to pretty much the very last actual play here. It was a play that Mark Pope kind of had his players watch, I guess, is kind of what he was saying. He had them watch rematches of the 1978, 1992, and 1998 Kentucky versus Duke game. And this was a play, I wasn't alive in 1978, Brandon, so I can't exactly recall how that game played out against Duke. But they did a play very similar to what we're about to see here, where it's a very risky play. It's a very ballsy, like whatever adjective you like. This is a play that you only run if you know that you had the personnel to do it. Kentucky sets themselves up here to. Well, I'll just go ahead and say what happens here. So you see Andrew Carr and Ortega Owe. They take their defenders. They sprint down towards Kobe Brea, who has the ball at the baseline. When they're doing that, you have Jackson Robinson kind of set half of the screen here, but doesn't really set a screen, but does just enough to distance the defender from Lamont Butler, who was kind of the wide receiver of this play. And the moment that Lamont kind of hits that three-point line and takes off, and you see the other two Duke defenders sprinting towards the baseline, you see Kobe Brea just unleash this perfect Joe Burrow pass. Look how much separation there is. Like, it helps as well that obviously Lamont's got a good amount of leeway there, but just a beautiful pass here from Kobe Brea. 5 seconds on the clock, 5 seconds on the clock. Kentucky up by 2. Really, all you have to do is just inbound the ball, and you're going to be fine. But Pope goes kind of for the ultimate. If this play works, it's going to work pretty much if it's executed properly, it's going to work pretty much every single time. Lamont gets the ball, a perfect pass, gets fouled right in the basket here. Ends up going 1 for 2 at the line. Ortega gets the offensive rebound on the second miss, and then he ices the game away. But this was the kind of the final actual play here of this game. We won't spend too long on it, Brandon, but I want to hear your thoughts. Tell me how, kind of put into terms how difficult this kind of play is and how much faith you have to have in the passer and just how ballsy it is to do it in a situation like this.
You have to have so much trust in Kobe Brea in order to run this play in this situation. And it's funny, during my 3 years coaching at Wabash College, it was always an early season practice. It was like kind of a fun thing, but like it mattered. And we would line up, if you have 18 guys on the team, whatever, you would line up all 18 of them. You would put them in this situation, and you just have them throw baseball passes. And you would find out, like you essentially had open tryouts for in this situation who was going to be your inbounder. And, we would always figure it out, and you would have, your best couple options. I'm assuming that, Kentucky has done something similar, and they found out, hey, Kobe Brea, slings the rock pretty good from out of bounds here. And he has that little Joe Burrow to him, as you mentioned. So, that there probably was some sort of like a tryout almost to be the trigger man, be the inbounder for this sort of a play. And to me, what's so impressive is the confidence that Kobe Brea showed to make the decision to throw it deep as quickly as he did. Like you can see as he rears back, like, there's not that much separation right now when he decides to throw this. I think he's mostly reading the fact that both of these defenders broke with their man. I think that's really what he's reading as much as anything. And he's just trusting if I throw it in the right spot, Lamont Butler can go get it. And obviously he does, but there's a lot of players where you would put this play in, you would run it. Lamont Butler might be open, but like, guess what? I mean, Ortega always open. Andrew Carr's going to be open. Yeah. Like you could just throw it to them and nobody's going to be like, yelling at Kobe Brea. So to have the guts to actually throw the pass, and like you could tell like he wanted to throw the pass the entire time. Like he's kind of early on cocking it back a little bit here. Like he's getting himself in position right now to throw it. And again, like you can walk through it a million times in practice where it doesn't really matter and everybody's kind of having fun. It's what you do at the end of practice or something. And you could easily launch this into the fifth row. You easily could have left it short and Duke picks it off at half court and all of a sudden has a chance to win the game. And, this time the dude just throws an absolute dime for, the basketball version of a touchdown. And we go to the free throw line to seal the game.
Yeah, it was really, there's like maybe not even half a second, maybe less than that, where Kobe kind of has to make up his mind. Okay, right. And it's one more frame, Brandon. Go one more frame. Maybe one more. Like right here, where he has to decide, okay, is Lamont going to be open or not? And I think Pope even said post-game that the actual play call wasn't specifically for Kobe to make this pass. It was a read situation. It was okay, if you think he's open, go for it. Like you said, Brandon, it did look like he kind of already maybe made up in his mind that that's what he wanted to do. And the second he saw Lamont, not even, like I said, the quarter second that he saw Lamont take off, he cocks it back, winds up, and just delivers a great ball. So very good decision making, and that's just another thing that goes back to having guys who have played over 100 college basketball games. I feel like I talk about it every single episode, but it just gives you a lot of confidence that you have guys who can make plays like this. It says a lot about Mark Pope to not only call the play, but to also trust a guy like Kobe Brea to make this throw, trust a guy like Lamont Butler to time his run right where he can go and get this and catch it. And then, to the next point, go down and make some free throws. He went 1 of 2, but it ended up paying off for Kentucky in general. So we just wanted to mention that because all the historical relevance of it, having this happen at a UK Duke game so many years ago, and then Pope bringing it back and executing it flawlessly was really cool to see. So Brandon, let's go ahead and wind down this episode here. I'll put ourselves up, you and me, so we can talk here mano a mano. Kentucky beat Duke. First time in like 9 years. They don't play that often, obviously, but a very big win. This is a game that you've seen it written 1,000 times on Twitter that Kentucky probably loses this game last year, the year before, the last few seasons. We've seen them lose the game over the last 10 years, essentially. But they didn't lose it. They had a lot of resolve, some very timely, adjustments in the second half. They figured out how to kind of handle Cooper Flag there at the very end, who definitely got tired and worn out. I'm sure that was baked into the game plan, if we're being honest, is, hey, let's try and run these guys into the ground. That played out at the very end there. So just give me your one big Brandon Ramsey take of the win.
I was just so impressed with the grit and the grind and just figuring it out as it goes on, because I'll be honest, Zach, and I said this on Twitter, I didn't think we had a chance to win the game at halftime. Like I'm just being honest. I forget if I texted you and Steven or if it was some of my other buddies or whatever. Like I said, I think my exact words were there was a better chance we lose by 20 than we cover the spread. I think that's what I was saying. And I really felt that way because I felt like that at halftime we were kind of fortunate for it to be where we were. Like we were winning the 3-point battle, I think 7-3 at halftime, and we were down 9 points. Like that, I felt like that was really problematic. Like just kind of doing the math of the game. I'm like, okay, I had talked about before the game. How does Kentucky win? We had to make more threes than Duke. Well, we were doing that. We were down 9. So I was like, well, that's going to start to even out. And then we're going to be, in deep here. Well, they just kept fighting. They made halftime adjustments to get some more stops. They tweaked some things. I don't want to use that word. They changed some things offensively as well, to kind of loosen things up, because especially late in the second half, like we saw, like the offense kind of got bogged down at times, and with some of Duke's switching, it was taking us out of what we wanted to do, and we kind of got back to some tempo and changing sides of the floor and some things there in the second half. So just the in-game coaching adjustments, the in-game player adjustments to take the coaching and kind of read what's happening and fixing it as you're going on, like to do that really in any game, but to do it when you're playing a team who, like, I still think I've watched as much college basketball as probably anybody through 10 days of the season. Duke's one of the 5 best teams in the country. I genuinely believe that. Like I know that there's always like this weird thing that I don't like about Kentucky fans where, like, once you beat somebody, they want to act like they're not that special. Where, like, I'm always the opposite. It's like, to me, isn't it better if we act like Duke's the greatest team ever? Like, that makes us look better.
Yeah.
Look better. There's nothing wrong with saying they're really darn good. They're really darn good. And for Kentucky to have the second half that they did and to figure out the way that they did against a team that's that talented is just so impressive, because Duke has all of the things that, like, we weren't sure, like, if this Kentucky team had. Like, they have a couple of go-to scores. Well, does Kentucky have a go-to score? Guess what happened down the stretch? Ours stepped up. Theirs turned the ball over 3 times in 90 seconds. So it was just very poetic the way that it all came together, and just the poise, like, of having older guys, of having Coach Pope on the sidelines, who is as poised of a human as you can watch over there. Like, he's not screaming and yelling and freaking out because we're down 9 at halftime. He has his plan. We just the plan wasn't to execute for 20 minutes. It was to execute for 40 minutes. And it took us 40 minutes to win the game, but that's okay. So it just everything about it. And to have it be against Duke in the Champions Classic just kind of turned it up even more. But it was just a really, really special performance, and one that, if his approval rating was 99.99 at about 9 p.m. on Tuesday night, by midnight it was 100. Like, I don't know what he could possibly do wrong at this point in the eyes of Big Blue Nation. But yeah, it was a special night. It was a lot of fun. This team was a lot of fun, and there's not much more you can say than that.
Yeah, like you were saying, I was definitely very discouraged with how the first half was going, because it felt like, that especially they started 5 for 5 from 3. I think they missed their next 8 before maybe Kerr, Lamont Butler, someone finally ended the drought there towards the end of the first half. But the offense, man, it just got so. I mean, I don't even know what the word is. Like, it just wasn't. There was no offense. It was just kind of a lot of weaving around the top, passing the ball off, and then kind of hoping that Amari Williams would maybe find a way to, pass somebody open or go in and make it. Like, he had that one floater from the free throw line that died the second it hit the back of the rim and luckily fell into the back. I think that was like a 6-point game. Duke had the lead, or maybe an 8-point game, and he makes that shot. And it was a very, like, they needed that shot to go in. It was, the offense just wasn't what we kind of expected. And then we saw them make whatever adjustments they did in the second half, and they became more physical. I thought that was a lot of it. Like, they just weren't very physical on offense in the first half. They were just kind of letting Duke push them around, bully them a little bit. Colin Chandler had a couple minutes in there where he just did not look like he was up to playing in this kind of game. We didn't see him the rest of the game, and he just got Coach Pope. He pressed the right buttons. He found the guys he wanted to. He realized that he could give the ball to Andrew Carr in the clutch there at the end, and let his guys work. And we, like you said, Kentucky might not have like a clear-cut go-to guy, but on a game-by-game basis, Pope is going to find guys on his team that he can call to go get buckets in the end. Against Duke, it was Andrew Carr. Against, another big team, it could be Jackson Robinson. It could be Otega Owe. Like, there are going to be a lot of different ways that Kentucky can
3 leading scorers in 3 games.
There you go. So, and that's what you want to see. So yeah, it was awesome. It really was. It was one of those, like, when you're working and stuff, like the whole last 10 minutes of the second half, I'm pretty much writing my recap the whole time. Like, I'm watching the game, but a lot of it is like trying to fill in everything. So like the second the buzzer goes off, I can hit post. So when I did my rewatch this morning, my smile was so much bigger, like being like, man, they really like Kobe Braya's defense, like he was locking up Con Knipple, like they were shutting down Cooper Flagg at the end. They're like, Duke didn't have anyone outside of Knipple, Flagg, and the Malowak guy, and those were their three freshmen who really couldn't do anything. I think Tyrese Proctor hit some weird shots in the first half, but it just, Kentucky, the defense in the second half was just so good. And maybe I underestimated how maybe good they could actually be on that end, because if anything, that showed me that they can maybe be like a top 50, maybe even better than that type defense throughout a whole season. And I think if they're in that top 40, top 50 range with the offense that we expect them to have, you've got a really good team that can make some noise in a postseason. We'll see how it all translates and goes on throughout the season, because this Duke team is only going to get better. Like, as long as Cooper Flagg and Knipple and Malowak are healthy and not cramping, because John Shire just can't figure out how to make guys not cramp, which just blows my mind that you can be a Division I basketball coach and not make your players not cramp like that. But maybe it was hot in the arena. I don't know. But so the defense was great. Just overall, the vibes are just so high right now. Like, the press conference today was awesome. Every time Pope opens his mouth, it feels like he's going to say something that, is philosophical, or like, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, really, like it. I'm drinking a lot of it right now, is what I'm saying. And I was a guy that really tried to come in with a lot of cautiousness for this season. So I'm trying to still take myself back a couple steps, just so I don't get too far ahead of myself, because we're only 3 games into this season. Got a lot of fun coming up. Kentucky plays Lipscomb next on Tuesday. When's the next big game, actually, Brandon? Let me look on my
at Clemson.
At Clemson, and that is going to come on December 3rd. So yeah, we've got 4 kind of cakewalk games in between Lipscomb, Jackson State, Western Kentucky, and Georgia State. Those will all be in Lexington between Tuesday and the end of November. And then a road game at Clemson.
Invitational games, Zach. Don't undersell the BBN Invitational.
Yes, the BBN Invitational, which has apparently been a thing. It's just never been kind of labeled that way. So whatever. Great episode here. Every time I say that we're going to have another episode and at like a specific time, that ends up not being the case. So I'm not even going to say when the next episode is. I imagine we'll probably do one within the next 2 or 3 games, or at least before they play Western Kentucky on Tuesday, November 26th. We'll definitely have another one before then. I don't even know. I won't make any more promises. Brandon,
we might put one out on Thanksgiving for you. Let's do a Thanksgiving episode.
A Thanksgiving sode. Yeah, I'll have my cornucopia right here in my hand, and we'll and you can put on like a pilgrim hat or something. It'll be awesome. But we're gonna get out of here. Steven's got more stuff to do. I've got more stuff to do. Brandon's got more stuff to do. So we will see you all next time. This was another great episode of Zoom Action. Later.